The morning light slipped gently through the cracked window, painting thin golden lines across the worn wooden floor. Inside the room, the quiet was almost too heavy, broken only by the soft ticking of a clock that seemed louder than usual. Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled the door, startling everyone inside. It wasn't the kind of polite knock that asked permission, it was firm, commanding, and impossible to ignore. For a moment, no one moved. Their breaths grew shallow, each person silently wondering who could be standing on the other side. The knock came again, harder this time, echoing through the stillness like a warning. A chill swept through the room, and in that suspended silence, it felt as though time itself was holding its breath, waiting for the door to open. The door creaked as it swung open, its hinges groaning like they hadn't been moved in years. A tall figure stepped into the doorway, his silhouette framed by the sunlight behind him. His face was worn, marked with lines of both hardship and experience, and his eyes carried the weight of unspoken truths. For a heartbeat, no one inside the room spoke, they just stared, frozen by the sudden intrusion. The air thickened, the atmosphere shifting as though the presence of this man had pulled a shadow into the space. His lips parted slowly, almost reluctantly, but there was determination in his voice when he finally spoke. It wasn't just an introduction, it was a statement, a reminder that his arrival was no accident. The sound of his words filled the room like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through each person's chest, stirring fear, curiosity, and the faint spark of recognition. He stepped further into the room, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight, and for a moment, it felt as though the walls themselves leaned closer to listen. His voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath the calmness, a quiet urgency that demanded attention. He spoke of things long hidden, choices made in secrecy, burdens carried alone, truths that had been carefully buried beneath years of silence. Each word was like a key turning inside a lock, opening doors the others had never dared to touch. Faces around the room shifted, some pale with disbelief, others flushed with anger. The more he revealed, the heavier the air became, pressing down on them like a storm about to break. His eyes swept across the room, not pleading for forgiveness, but daring anyone to challenge the reality he had just placed before them. The words had barely settled in the air before the room erupted. Voices clashed like crashing waves, each one louder and more desperate than the last. Some shouted in fury, demanding explanations, while others argued in defense, unwilling to believe what they had just heard. The small space suddenly felt suffocating, as though the walls were closing in on their chaos. A chair scraped sharply against the floor as someone rose, slamming a hand down on the table to cut through the noise. The sound silenced the room for only a fleeting moment, but the damage had already been done. Trust had cracked, splintering into pieces too jagged to ever fit back together. Each face was a battlefield of emotions, anger, confusion, sorrow, and fear, every pair of eyes burning with questions that no one was brave enough to fully ask. Amid the storm of voices, one figure slowly rose from the corner of the room. Their face was pale, but their eyes carried a quiet strength that silenced the room more effectively than any shout could. For a long moment, they said nothing, only letting the weight of their presence settle across the others. Then, with a steady breath, they spoke, firm, deliberate, and unshaken. Their words cut through the tension like a blade, not with anger, but with the force of truth long suspected. Unlike the others, they had sensed this coming, had noticed the small cracks in the story that no one else dared to question. But knowing and hearing were different things, and now the betrayal burned even deeper. Their voice did not tremble, yet every word carried the sting of pain, as they demanded answers no one else seemed brave enough to seek. The room fell into an uneasy hush as the questions lingered in the air, heavy and unavoidable. The man's gaze shifted from one face to another, and slowly, he began to answer. His words came carefully, each one chosen like a stone laid on fragile ground, but with every sentence, the truth grew sharper. Piece by piece, the hidden past unfolded, secrets that explained the silence, the betrayals, and the quiet glances that had always gone unspoken. Each revelation struck like a hammer, breaking away the thin walls of denial the others had built around themselves. Some sat frozen, unable to move, while others clenched their fists, fighting the emotions surging within them. Tears welled in the corner of one person's eyes, though pride forced them to blink them back. What once felt like safety now felt like a prison of lies, and with every word, the chains grew heavier. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. The faint laughter of children drifted from the street, birds called from the trees, and the steady rhythm of life pressed forward. Yet inside those four walls, time felt suspended, trapped between what had been revealed and what was yet to come. Each person sat in silence, weighed down by the choice before them. To accept the truth meant reshaping everything they thought they knew, tearing apart the fragile comfort of the lies they had lived with. To deny it meant carrying the burden of deceit, pretending ignorance while the truth gnawed at them from within. The stillness grew unbearable, the kind of silence that pressed against the chest, demanding a decision. No one spoke, but their eyes met briefly, searching for courage in one another, unsure if any of them had enough strength to face what waited ahead. At last, the silence shattered, not with anger this time, but with a single, steady breath. One of them stood, their shadow stretching across the room as though declaring the weight of the choice they were about to make. No words were needed at first, the determination in their eyes spoke louder than anything. Finally, their voice broke the stillness, calm but unyielding, carrying the weight of all that had been revealed. What they said was not just a decision, it was a line drawn, one that would shape the fate of everyone present. The others listened, their expressions a mixture of fear, resignation, and a faint spark of hope. Though the truth had torn through them like fire, it had also left behind something raw, something that could no longer be ignored. As the final words echoed in the air, the room held its breath again, not in dread this time, but in anticipation of the path that lay ahead.